Teaching isn't confined to the classroom, so today on Resource Review we're looking at 3 primary resources for use in the great outdoors. They are a light and moisture meter, a folder of activities to enrich nature walks, and an instrument that's more at home in a doctor's surgery. Recommending today's resources, we have John Reimer. John is Worcestershire Children's Services Advisor for Sustainability and Head of Bishopswood Centre. On the panel today we have Pat Henchy. Pat is Head Teacher at Lowther Primary School in Barnes, and Education Consultant Adrienne Jones. And Matthew Tosh, our roving resource investigator, is out and about to see what pupils and teachers make of our resources. John, let's have a look at your first choice of resource for us today, and it is the light and moisture meter. Tell us about this resource and why you like it.
It's a meter that's actually designed for use with houseplants, so it's simple to use and it's relatively inexpensive, but I find it works really well outside as well. When children are studying a comparison between 2 habitats, they can actually start measuring some of the physical differences. So they should find, for example, if you're out on the school field, you'll get much higher light levels than you will under a hedge or in a woodland. And the same with the soil moisture. You can compare a woodland and a meadow or a marsh, and they actually get some figures to relate the kind of plants and animals that are in those habitats too.
OK, well, we can have a go now. We've got 2 basil plants here, so just to show it working. So literally just punch the probe in.
Push it into the soil.
Ooh, look at that. Moisture shot up, settling there around about 5. And now let's see this plant here. Oh, that's lower.
I particularly like this one because the probe for the soil moisture is actually on a lead. Some of the cheaper ones are actually attached to the meter, and the children tend to push down on the meter to get it into the soil, and they tend to break.
OK, well, Matthew visited Kensington Primary School in Newham, East London, where Elaine Brewood and her Year 2 budding botanists were using the light and moisture meter.
Well, just before the lesson starts, I want to show you the light and moisture meter. Now, in moisture mode, you take off your reading on the top of the scale here between 1 and 10, and this is your moisture probe. You put that directly into the compost. But if you want to measure light, then you just flick the switch across, and this time we're using the bottom scale, letters A to H. And if you turn it around, you can see the light sensor here. It's just a case of pointing that towards the light source. Now, the meter comes with a chart for you to read off for different plants. You can tell whether a plant is getting too much or not enough light and moisture. Well, we're going to see it in action now. Elaine Brewood's Year 2 class, so let's see how they get on.
So there's a geranium here, there's a geranium there.
Yeah, it's on number 8. I don't know. It is on 2.
So what does that mean?
It has just a little bit of it.
Right, do you think you might need a bit more water at some point? OK, right. Elaine, can you tell me how you've been using the light and moisture meters?
We've been testing them on the plants that we have in our classroom, and we've been testing them out in the playground, in the sort of tub plants and the walled garden outside. And I think they know a bit more now about moisture and water, how a plant grows. And I think they know a little bit about how scales work. So that will really help them when we get on to doing measurement in numeracy.
Now, what about the 2 scales, the separate scales for light and moisture, and there's a switch as well? Do you think that's a bit complicated?
I wouldn't say it's complicated, but I think it throws them to begin with, because the scales they've been used to, a scale where it shows just one sort of gadget going up and down. These have got 2, but it didn't take them long. They love gadgets.
Miss, it's past 10.
No. Do you know what that means? When it goes
Too much water.
It means too much water.
So, Elaine, your overall impressions of the meter?
Good, very good. It's been fun using it. It's wonderful for vocab, extending their vocabulary in all cross-curricular. So yeah, I would definitely use it again.
Thank you very much, Elaine. And now to my ray of sunshine, it must be Hermione.
Well, Pat, what do you think? Are you a fan of the light and moisture meter?
Absolutely. Cheap, hands-on. I would never have thought to go to a garden centre, see something on the shelf, buy it in bulk, and then have it for children to use and to feel that they're actually understanding the processes of just being outdoors. What does light do? What does shade do? And what does water do? Great fun.
Fantastic. Sounds like you've had a bit of a revelation.
Loved it. Thank you.
Adrienne, what did you think?
I like the way that it doesn't rely on batteries. This little leaflet is obviously for adults. I mean, for me, it's great because my houseplants are desperately needing light and water. But a teacher can extrapolate from that using an interactive whiteboard. You know, you've got a wonderful facility to put charts and grids and comparisons, and the children can enter data. And I like the way that it's actually a kind of grown-up piece of science.
Well, thank you. Time now to move on to John's second choice of resource for us today, and it is the Earthwalks folder. John, explain this resource to us. And again, what makes it stand out? Why do you like it?
I first came across this in 1984 and I've been using it ever since. It's come from America, but you can buy them in this country, and I think it stood the test of time. It's a series of sensory activities to develop that sense of wonder between children and the natural world. When I first started, I would do one at a time, just to get used to it, just to have to make one set of props. But as you build up your repertoire, it's well worth doing a sequence of them because there's a synergy there.
OK, well, Matthew visited Glebe First and Middle School in Harrow, North London, where teacher Katie Hobson is using just one of the activities with her Year 2 class.
Hold it up to the light, see if you can see any veins.
Earthwalks Earth Magic is a collection of a dozen or so sensory activities designed to give a fresh take on the familiar and unfamiliar things in the natural world. Now, the idea is that you plan a walk to include 4 or 5 of these activities, and which ones you choose obviously depends on where your walk is and what the focus of your lesson is. Now, the activities are all on cards, and each card has a little narrative giving you some information, and on the back of each narrative there's some guidelines for teachers telling you some props that you might need for the lesson and general notes. There's also some hints and tips on organising walks and a couple of model walks that you might want to refer to. Well, I'm off for my walk now with Katie Hobson and her Key Stage 1 class to see how they use this resource.
It's very big, isn't it?
That's a little bit of dirt, isn't it? Katie, we've escaped for a moment. Can you tell us how you've used the resource today?
OK, we decided upon the leaf slide activity, obviously because it's autumn and the leaves are particularly beautiful at this time of year, and it was a good opportunity for the children to go out onto the field, have a look at the leaves, use magnifying glasses to observe, and then they came in and they used viewfinders to do some observational drawings. Come on then. The children love outdoor learning. They really enjoy getting outside and having a look at nature. They've enjoyed it a lot today.
What is it in particular that you like about this resource?
I like the suggestions for different walks that they can go on. It's given ideas for different ways of doing outdoor learning.
And do you think it could be improved in any way?
I think the presentation of the pack could be improved. It doesn't look particularly inviting, although one advantage that it does have is it's not specifically aimed at any year group and it can be adapted. I think it could be improved by its being related a lot more to the curriculum, the national curriculum, and the schemes of work.
Thank you, Katie, that's interesting. And now it's time to leave this school and we'll get back to the studio.
Adrienne, what do you make of the Earthwalks activity folder?
As presentation is concerned, I found it slightly irritating that it was on the side as opposed to face down, but that's a minor point in many ways because I think the content and the intention, which is about being one with nature, actually brings out a kind of spiritual element in learning and being in the world. The only thing I would say, they seem very prescriptive and it's almost like learning a script. And that may put teachers off, but I think if it's done in the spirit of interpreting what is suggested as this activity and then developing it yourself, bearing in mind that it's about being in nature and it's learning outside the classroom, and that the emphasis is on that, and so it should be.
I think that's absolutely right. It does look like a script because it's written in a way that is called You Are There. It's to actually give you a flavour of the activity actually happening with a group of youngsters. You don't take the pack out into the field with you, you actually learn the sequence of the activities, but then you make it your own.
Pat?
When I received the resource, I thought, 1981, American, I'm an urban school head teacher. What relevance is it to me? But for me, the resource is a timely reminder that children are citizens of the world, and actually we need to make sure that we encourage children to realise the awe and wonder of nature. And I think on the staff room table, when we flicked through it, we all thought, let's just go out. Don't worry about SATs, targets, whatever. Let's just go out so children can be. And I think that's what that resource will do. It's magic.
Well, let's move on to John's third choice of resource for us today. And something a little bit unusual, John. You're recommending the use of a stethoscope. I've got one here. In what way should schools be using a stethoscope in the outdoor environment?
Take the stethoscope out in spring, put it to a silver birch tree on a warm day, and you will hear the sap rushing up the tree. It's all about, again, getting children back in touch with nature, making them realise that plants are living things.
Right, well, we have actually got a recording of some sap rising in a birch tree, so let's have a little listen to that. It's an extraordinary noise, isn't it? Is that what you might be able to hear using one of these?
That recording was taken using a probe inserted inside the tree, which is quite an expensive thing to do, but you actually can hear that noise with a stethoscope on a warm day.
But it might be slightly quieter or slightly more muffled.
Be a little bit quieter, a little bit more muffled, but you will hear that sort of sound. If you can't wait till spring and if you can't find a silver birch tree, just go out and listen to some dead logs, see if you can hear beetles scrabbling around inside them.
Pat, is this something you've ever tried with your pupils?
No, and I have to say, when the stethoscope arrived and hear the sap rise in trees, I laughed. But one of my jokers also said, we have school pets, and it would be great to be able to listen to the gerbils' heart beating.
God, so poor gerbil.
So they can then compare it to a human. So multi-purpose, but the sap rising, I have to say, I'll have to wait until spring.
Yes. Well, Adrienne, bearing the outdoor environment in mind, what do you think of the stethoscope?
I like the idea of it. I think there's probably a lot more than has been suggested that could be explored, even listening to the ground. But one practical point I found, certainly when I tried it out, is it didn't half hurt my ears.
Right.
It was very tight, and I think it's just a slight word of warning that the spring action actually presses in quite hard. Yes. So I just think it's a little minor point to be aware of.
Delicate little ears with these, what do you think?
Yes, I think you can adjust the spring, I think you can bend it, but you can actually reduce the pressure, I think.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. But to recap, the three resources that we've looked at are a light and moisture meter from Tenax UK Limited, Earthwalks Earth Magic from the Institute for Earth Education, and a stethoscope available from TTS Group. For more information about any of the resources we've discussed today, go to our website. It's teachers.tv/resource review, or email us resourcereview@teachers.tv. A very big thank you to our panel, to John, to Pat and to Adrienne. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Resource Review. Bye-bye.